Miss Reed had marched in, demanding a DNA test to prove that her estranged husband, Roniel Wallace, was not the father of Miss Austin's child. And if that wasn't enough, she was also suing Miss Austin for $5,000, claiming the woman had wrecked her marriage and left her struggling financially. But Miss Austin? She stood her ground, insisting that Wallace was the father and that she owed Miss Reed nothing.
Ms. Reed, you are demanding that Ms. Austin have a paternity test administered on her child, whom she claims was fathered by your estranged husband.
Yes, Your Honor.
You're hoping the DNA test will prove that your husband is not.
It all started when Miss Reed, exhausted from giving birth to her second child, picked up her fiancé's phone. A call from an unknown number. She answered, expecting nothing out of the ordinary, but the voice on the other end shattered her world. They were supposed to be a family, but here was Miss Austin, claiming a title that didn't belong to her. The confrontation was immediate.
Okay, Your Honor, I found out about Mrs. Austin. One day I came in from the hospital from having my second child, and Roniel's phone rang, and I just so happened to answer the phone. And Mrs. Austin, she said, I'm Roniel's girlfriend. I said, Roniel's girlfriend, did you know that Roniel was engaged to me or whatever and just had a baby? She said, no.
Miss Reed, reeling from the betrayal, took her children and left. But Wallace came crawling back, begging for forgiveness, and she, against all better judgment, forgave him again and again. She even married him. Miss Austin insisted she had no idea Wallace was engaged.
He never told me that they was engaged neither. I found out on Facebook that Roniel and Miss Reed was married when she posted a picture up there of their marriage life. That's when I found out. And yes, I did confront Roniel about the marriage, but at the same token,
even when Miss Austin discovered Wallace was married, she didn't back off. She made up a series of excuses which set Miss Reed off. She was done playing nice. A woman with self-respect, she argued, wouldn't settle for being a mistress. It was time to meet the man both women were fighting over. When Wallace entered, the room fell silent. This was the man at the center of all this chaos.
How you doing?
Mr. Wallace, let me ask you, you married to Ms. Reed,
Yes.
but you were sleeping with Ms. Austin.
Yes.
You had a baby with Ms. Reed.
3, Your Honor.
3.
Correct.
You might have a baby with Ms. Austin.
Allegedly.
You busy.
Not a good wife? What a thing to say to your wife in front of strangers. Wallace wasn't done. He said that he cheated because he was bored and was too young to be married. He didn't deny it. He simply didn't care. So Miss Reed learned from him. She took her revenge by sleeping with Ms. Austin's boyfriend. Talk about killing 2 birds with 2 stones. Well, what about the baby?
Admit to being intimate with Ms. Austin.
Correct.
So do you believe her child is your child?
No, ma'am.
Why is that?
Because she had.
don't you say no, boy, and she looked just like you. She looked just
she looked
like
like
you.
the other
She got
guy.
everything. Everything you want, she got on that, everything.
She looked like the other guy.
Quite the dilemma, eh? But this case is just getting started. Not only does Mr. Wallace have a wife and a pregnant mistress, he also has a girlfriend. Yes, you heard that right. And worse, the girlfriend is also pregnant and insists that Mr. Wallace is the father. 1 man, 3 women, 2 paternity cases. You might want to put on your seatbelt.
Thank you so much. Now, what brings you to court today? What would you like to add?
I also have a 5-month-old child by Mr. Wallace that he claims he's not the father of.
You also have a 5-month-old child that you say was fathered by Mr. Wallace, but he's denying that child as well.
Yes.
The judge ruled in favor of Ms. Austin. She had not actively chased after Wallace, so Ms. Reed's $5,000 suit can't stand. To tackle these 2 cases, we have to do them one after the other. So Judge Lauren requests the results of the first case. But don't get it twisted. This is where all hell let loose.
Baby Demuriel, Mr. Wallace, you are her father.
Told you, dummy. She looked just like everything, dummy.
You sitting there saying that, but you wishing on strings. Sorry.
Mr. Wallace casually looks on as the 2 women trade words. He's probably thinking of adding another girlfriend to the mix. Anyway, 1 case down, 1 more to go. It appears that Ms. Austin has been honest about the events. Still, Ms. Reed is fighting tooth and nail for her husband. The judge wants to get to the root of the matter today, so she orders the DNA test for Ms. Roberts. While they wait for the results, Judge Lauren questions her about her relationship with Wallace.
Roberts, you are here requesting a paternity test to the defendant, Mr. Wallace, that he is the father of your 5-month-old son, Danielle. I've asked the court to administer a lie detector test to prove he's still trying to be with you. Mr. Wallace.
Ms. Roberts told the court that Mr. Wallace never told her he was married. When the judge asked Mr. Wallace why, he claimed he had forgotten. That's right, he forgot that he was married. Despite the lie, the relationship had gone on. The DNA results confirmed that Mr. Wallace was the father of Ms. Roberts' child, but before then, the court was set on fire.
Okay, I found out about Demuriel because she was calling Rayel's phone and Facebooking him.
Ms. Wallace.
Yeah,
Okay, Ms. Austin.
Correction. I found out about. Sorry,
See, y'all trying to confuse me.
Sorry.
Ms. Austin.
I found out.
Beat Miss Wallace.
This was a full-blown battlefield, and the courtroom was the war zone. On one side, Miss Jackson, a grandmother determined to prove that her incarcerated son had been tricked into fatherhood. On the other hand, Miss Pickens, a mother adamant that the child in question was indeed his. What started as a dispute over DNA quickly spiraled into an all-out war of accusations and explosive tempers.
Jackson, you are petitioning the court to determine the paternity of your alleged granddaughter. You claim your son, who is currently incarcerated, would be a fool to think he fathered Miss Pickens' one-year-old daughter.
From the moment Miss Jackson took the stand, she came in swinging. According to her, there was no way this child belonged to her son. Not a chance of that. And why? Because, in her words, Miss Pickens was no saint. She had been with multiple men around the time of conception. Miss Pickens, however, wasn't about to be steamrolled. She fired back.
Miss Jackson, why did you initially accept the baby if you had doubts?
Your Honor, I never accepted the baby. That's a lie. I stated from day one, I do not believe this is my granddaughter. If I can bring you into my reality.
I want to go in. Tell me what happened.
Once the courtroom calmed down, the real mess began. Miss Pickens admitted that she had been involved with at least 2 men, but that wasn't enough to convince her she had any doubts about who the father was. She was confident that it was Miss Jackson's son. Why? Because he had chased her, pursued her relentlessly. Every day they had been together, and they weren't just holding hands and singing Kumbaya.
Okay. And this is something you know.
So now, Miss Pickens, let me hear from you. So you find out you're pregnant and you know it's Miss Jackson's son's child, or what happened?
I did believe that it was one of the guys that I was dating, but
that would be biologically the answer. It was one of.
Miss Jackson shut that down fast. She had sworn she hadn't even known Miss Pickens existed until she randomly showed up at her doorstep with a baby that was already 4 months old. And now she wants to make it clear that her son, who lived under her roof, had never once mentioned this woman or the child she was claiming as his.
Sex with someone else at that same time.
No, not at that same time.
Well, then how could you call somebody else the father?
When we broke up, but yeah, with the boy.
Because you was having unprotected sex with more than one man.
When we broke up, I did start talking to somebody.
Miss Jackson looked like she had heard enough. When the topic of resemblance came up, it was clear she wasn't going to budge. Ms. Pickens said that although she saw other men while she was messing around with Ms. Jackson's son, she was convinced that the baby belonged to Ms. Jackson's son. Her evidence: the baby resembles Ms. Jackson's son. Ms. Jackson wouldn't hear of it.
And decide, no, it's not that guy, it's Miss Jackson. When did you change your mind and why?
When he pursued me, calling me and like, oh, well, that's my baby, this, that. So, I was
when
like,
you say he pursued you, you meant when you had this baby, Miss Jackson's son.
For Ms. Jackson, the baby didn't look like her son, but Miss Pickens wasn't about to let that slide either. She pointed out that Miss Jackson had, at one point, welcomed her into her home, allowed her and her baby to visit, and had even spent time with the child. Why had she done all that if she never believed this was her grandchild? Miss Jackson's answer, plain and simple:
actually expressed interest and established a relationship
Never.
with the baby.
I never had
1 second, ma'am.
I never established a relationship with this child. We got text messages that will even sit up here and say I never established.
The air crackled with tension. Voices overlapped. The judge had to step in, demanding order, before things got completely out of control. She asked Jerome to stand between the women. She must have sensed that the tension was about to escalate.
So now walk me through your doubt. If your son says, Mama, I'm going to pick up my little girl.
My doubt is, Your Honor, my doubt is because
she
for the simple fact of,
you came to pick us up.
The doubt was for the simple fact of my son.
Despite the judge's warning, the women kept going at each other. Every story was dissected, disagreed with, and argued against. But there is a damning revelation. Ms. Jackson told the court that Ms. Pickens had lied about another pregnancy. so she couldn't trust her claim that the child was her son. The judge then turned to Ms. Manning, the current girlfriend of Ms. Jackson's son, and she reignited the flame.
Markel's not even concerned about Kevin being the father. She's concerned about me and Kevin's relationship.
I had never
From day
concerned.
one, I didn't know Markel from a can of paint. She found me.
So you're
did
Ms.
not know her. I
Jackson's
did not-
son's
I did
current.
not-
Okay, Ms. Pickens?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Manning, I'm trying to understand. You're his current girlfriend?
Yes.
Ms. Manning is standing firm with her mother-in-law. There is no way her baby daddy is the father of Ms. Pickens' child. But when the moment of truth arrived, Ms. Manning lit the torch and the courtroom exploded. The peace that the judge had tried to maintain was lost.
Mrs. Jackson, you are not her grandmother.
Got you.
Thank you, God. Don't do it. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Ms. Moore's voice was filled with frustration. She had one message. Mr. Butler had doubts about fathering her child, and she blamed only one person, his wife. That woman, she insisted, was behind everything. But Mr. Butler? Oh no, he wasn't taking the blame. His defense? Moore herself had told him multiple times that he wasn't the father. In fact, he believed she was only dragging him into this mess to win him back. And that was just the beginning of this fiery battle.
One reason the defendant, Mr. Butler, has doubts he fathered your 1-year-old daughter, and that's because of his manipulating wife.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Butler, you argue you've been told.
The judge barely had time to get a word in before the accusations started flying. Ms. Moore was livid. Mr. Butler had done next to nothing for the baby, just diapers and wipes, and that wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Mr. Butler stood there unmoved. His doubt was simple. She told him he wasn't the dad, and he took her at her word. But when the judge pressed for details, the room exploded.
Has Mr. Butler been involved in your child's life in any way?
If you're talking about diapers and wipes, that's it. That's not a father to me at all, period.
Only diapers and wipes?
That's it.
All right, so look, let's talk about why we're here. Mr. Butler, you obviously have doubts.
Ms. Butler's wife shot up from her seat. She had receipts. Not just once, but multiple times she had heard Moore say Butler wasn't the father. And she wasn't just talking, she had texts. She had heard it with her own ears. The tension escalated as she flung her words across the courtroom, daring Ms. Moore to challenge her.
He was told by Ms. Moore he was not father of the child.
Your Honor, on numerous times.
One time.
Numerous times.
One time.
That's a lie.
Harassment.
I ain't never
You
harassed
and your
you a day.
so-called husband.
Whatever.
That part.
Your Honor, I was getting my hair done.
Moore wasn't backing down. She fired right back, shouting that it was all harassment. The insults came rapid fire. The courtroom felt more like a battlefield, with two women locked in a heated verbal war while Butler, the supposed father, sat in silence, letting them tear each other apart.
I believe that the conception dates are all wrong, because how can you tell somebody they pregnant in December but you have the baby in July?
Excuse me, correction. I was 7.5 weeks, December 11th.
Okay, but you would not have had your baby. You would have not have had your baby.
The judge had seen enough. She slammed the courtroom back into order. No more name-calling, no more chaos. They were here for the truth, and they were going to get it. Then came the next twist, conception dates. Butler's wife insisted the math didn't add up. If Moore had told Butler she was pregnant in December, she argued, the baby should have been born in September. But Moore wasn't having it.
Don't add up. Now, please, explain to the court why you believe that's true.
Because if you told him in December that you were pregnant, your baby would have been born in September, because my daughter is September 22nd.
But oh, it didn't stop there. Because the truth about Butler? He was a serial cheater. Moore had receipts of her own. His last baby was born just 2 weeks apart from hers. She had the proof, found it in his phone, and saw it in his life. And when Butler showed up at her doorstep, he always came with bags thinking he could stay. She painted him as a drifter, a man bouncing from one woman to the next.
You say he came with bags, what does that mean?
When Quincy come with bags, he thinks he's about to stay. He's a leech. He is a leech. And his so-called wife told me that over the phone. It's always, if I call Quincy, it's always her.
For Butler's wife, Moore had no right to speak to Butler anymore. He is married now. Anything concerning him, money, responsibilities, everything, went through her. And more, she wasn't buying it. If Butler was married, then maybe she should be the one paying child support. Moore had a sharp tongue, and she wasn't afraid to use it. But enough about Ms. Moore. The court wants to hear from her mother.
I called him and I said, you know, my daughter is pregnant. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, she's pregnant. And he says, well, I'm gonna be there for her. I'm gonna take care of her. I'm gonna take care of the baby. All of a sudden,
no, Your Honor.
There is no Quincy in sight no more.
Ms. Moore recounted the struggles of giving birth and was at the brink of tears. But after her story, Mr. Butler said it was all a lie. To back him up, his wife provided receipts and cold, hard pictures that have led Mr. Butler to doubt whatever Ms. Moore was saying. And just like that, it started.
Oh, that's me and my fiance. Like I told you, he stepped up.
This is the same man that
went to every doctor's appointment.
That looks just like him. Your Honor, the other reason is the baby doesn't carry his last name. Doesn't carry the last name. She's never shown him the birth certificate.
Ms. Moore also presented her documents to confirm her struggles in the hospital. The tension was thick. The judge could barely keep them from tearing each other apart. But there was one thing left, the DNA test.
Mr. Butler.
Yes, ma'am.
You are her father.
18 years of marriage, 27 years together, 5 children, and now everything is on the line because of one crucial question. Who is the father of little Ronisiah? Ms. Carmen walked into court with one goal, to save her marriage by proving that her husband, Mr. Carmen, is their 4-year-old daughter's biological father.
Carmen, you open your case today in hope of saving your 18-year marriage. You testify your husband denies he fathered your 4-year-old daughter, Ronisia.
But Mr. Carmen, he came prepared to do just the opposite. Armed with what he called bombshell evidence, he was ready to prove that another man was the father. And if the DNA test confirms his suspicions, the marriage was over.
Mr. Carmen, you say when the DNA results reveal that you are not Ronisia's father, your marriage is over. You claim to have bombshell evidence that proves another man is the daddy. Is that correct?
They laid out their side of the story. Once upon a time, their love had been electric. Date nights, laughter, and a bond that felt unbreakable. But now, that love was hanging by a thread, and it all traced back to one messy separation.
18 years of marriage, 27 we have been together. Today, our life is really dependent on what's gonna happen today.
Wow. And so your marriage is on the line?
Yes, Your Honor.
It started over something small, a disagreement about a rental car, but that tiny crack split their marriage wide open. Frustrated and angry, Mr. Carmen packed his bags and left. But where did he go? Well, he didn't just move out, he moved on.
You got married, started a family. How does it get to the point where there could be a paternity issue at all?
Well, Your Honor, we had a separation. I went to rent a car and I couldn't get a car, and it was around Easter time. So because I couldn't get the car, I kind of took it out on him.
Let's be honest, he just didn't move on. Mr. Carmen got himself a new place, and let's just say it wasn't a lonely bachelor pad. According to Mrs. Carmen, that apartment became a boom boom room. A party house filled with women, music, and things a married man had no business doing, and she had proof.
He went and rented an apartment.
Yeah, I went and got my own.
Turned it into a boom boom room. I had to pay somebody $100 to go into the home to see what was going on, and
That was all it took. Mrs. Carmen wasn't about to sit at home and cry. If her husband was out there having the time of his life, she was going to get a life of her own. So she did. One man, one relationship, one major complication.
He showed me a videotape. I gave him the $100 bill. He showed me a videotape with him with all kind of women kissing on him, sitting all on his lap, doing all kinds of stuff. So then I decided I gotta go to me. I'm not finna sit around even though, and I can't believe we had been married so long. We should have been able to work through this.
Because shortly after their break, she and Mr. Carmen got back together. No conversations, no explanations, just a silent agreement to move forward. And when she found out she was pregnant, they both assumed, or at least pretended, that the baby was his. But now, 4 years later, that illusion was crumbling fast. Mr. Carmen had doubts, big ones, and he wasn't just going off a gut feeling. He was convinced that Mrs. Carmen's other man was actually the father.
Basically told me that I was pregnant. He was kind of like asleep, sitting at a little table, and then the doctor asked me, was it okay for him to be in the room? And I said, yeah, that's my husband. And then I went on with my pregnancy.
And so were you happy? Did you say, say, I have doubt. What was your response?
No, at the time, I was like, all right, well, one more, let's do it again.
She swore she had been faithful since their reconciliation. He wasn't buying it. She said he was creating drama where there was none. He was certain she was hiding the truth. The back and forth grew so intense that the judge had to step in twice, but even that didn't stop the fire.
Still should be able to look at her and tell that's his daughter.
No, you really can't, because we do this every day too.
Your Honor.
So we can't just go on that.
Them ears are so small on both of them. All of the kids got them ears are so little.
They work though.
He can hear, yeah, they work.
And then the moment of truth arrived. Mrs. Carmen was on the verge of tears. Mr. Carmen was fired up and the tension was unbearable. An 18-year-old marriage was on the line. The judge held the DNA results in her hand. The courtroom fell silent.
Mr. Carmen, you are the father.
Ms. Brogdon stood across from Ms. Sugden and her mother, her face set with determination. She had come for one thing: proof that her 1-year-old daughter, Quamira, was the biological child of Tyrell Jones, the man she claimed as the father. But the other side, they weren't having it, not one bit.
Ms. Brogdon, you are in court to prove to Ms. Jones and her daughter that her deceased son, Tyrell Jones, fathered your 1-year-old daughter, Quamira. You say once the DNA proves your case, they need to step up for your baby.
Ms. Sugden, Tyrell's sister, was adamant. There was no way this child belonged to her late brother. The mere accusation, she argued, was a disgrace, a stain on her grieving family, and a cruel burden on their mother, who was still mourning Tyrell's death. But Ms. Brogdon wasn't backing down.
So, Ms. Brogdon, how has your daughter been affected by the denial?
She has been affected from no partake in her father's side of the family. My baby's 1, she only saw their side like 4 times. She only see them when it's time for gatherings and stuff about Tyrell.
2 brothers? That's enough to create doubt. The revelation had everyone reeling. Even Judge Lauren had to pause, making sure she had heard correctly. Ms. Brogdon admitted it, but insisted that Tyrell was the father. The other brother, Paul? That had been one mistake. A single night of anger when Tyrell had betrayed her. A bad decision, yes, but a paternity risk? No, she argued. The timing didn't line up.
Like close to the end, Tyrell started cheating, he started staying out, he started doing all this type of stuff. It was one night, Tyrell lied and said he was at the police district. I went to the police district to check to see if he was there. He wasn't there. I went to his grandmother's house where he said he was there.
Ms. Sugden scoffed at that logic. Then came another twist. Ms. Brogdon, under fire, made a statement that sent another ripple through the courtroom. If Tyrell wasn't the father, she said, then Paul was. Either way, her daughter was still part of their family. The room erupted again.
Personally, that she was sleeping with 2 brothers around the same time.
Your Honor. I slept with Paul 1 time.
All it takes is one time, sweetheart.
No.
So, Ms. Sugden, do you think it's a possibility that your other brother could be this child's father?
I think there's a possibility. Yes, I got that news. So yes, now I think there's a possibility.
The whole room was spiraling, the argument turning personal, cutting deep. This wasn't just about a child. This was about betrayal, about family lines being blurred and bonds being shattered. Ms. Sugden laid it all out. Ms. Brogdon had torn her family apart, had made her brothers fight over her, and had left wounds that still hadn't healed. And now she wanted them to accept a child they weren't sure even belonged to them?
You said at first you only slept with Paul once.
Exactly.
And it was nowhere near the window of conception. And then you just said now it's either one of their babies. If it's not Tyrell's, it's Paul's. So either way, the child is related to you. So which?
No way.
Ms. Brogdon brought a witness to prove that her claims were true. This is not just any witness. She had called the mother of Tyrell's middle child. There is little chance that this woman would be lying. There's nothing in it for her. Or is there? But then, the real fireworks started.
And you're here testifying on behalf of Ms. Brogdon, who claims that he fathered her child as well.
Yes.
What do you have to add?
When she called me and said she had the baby, Tiara was at my house. I said, Tiara, she had the baby, one go. What I'm going to the hospital for?
Ms. Brogdon is pissed. After raising her child alone, struggling without support, after watching her baby fall ill and suffer seizures while Tyrell's family stayed distant, she had been left to carry the weight of it all while they refused to acknowledge her daughter. She wasn't going to continue like that.
You're saying that Ms. Sugden and Ms. Jones, they didn't know anything throughout the pregnancy?
No, they did know something about.
You believe they did?
Yes, they did. I came to the funeral pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant. How didn't y'all know I was pregnant?
See you at the funeral.
Ms. Brogdon wasn't the only one who brought witnesses. Ms. Sugden also had her witness, and this witness isn't here for peace. The testimony lasted for a few seconds, and then there was the explosion. Accusations flying, voices clashing. Even the judge had to step in, demanding order.
That's why that's the bottom line of what your testimony, that it's someone
It couldn't have been anybody.
We don't know if that's our baby. Not running around the hospital.
It could have been done a year ago.
And the crazy
Ms. Brogdon, undeterred, hit back just as hard. If they had doubts, the DNA test would clear everything up. But deep down, she already knew the truth. Judge Lauren opened the envelope, and all the noise and tension collapsed into a deafening silence.
Miss Christina Jones is related to Quamira Jones. Now we will determine Mr. Paul Jones is not the father. Which means Tyrell Jones is Quamira's biological father.
Ms. Parker stormed into court with fire in her eyes and a mission to prove that Mr. Morton was the father of her 7-month-old son, Aaron. Not only did she insist that Mr. Morton was Aaron's father, but she also accused his girlfriend of poisoning his mind against her. Jealousy, she claimed, because the girlfriend hadn't been able to conceive a child with him. And if that wasn't enough, she wanted him to cough up over $2,000 in back child expenses.
In your suit, you claim Mr. Morton fathered your 7-month-old son, Aaron, while in a relationship with his current girlfriend.
Yes, Your Honor.
You say the only reason he denies paternity is because his girlfriend turned him against you because she's been unable to conceive a child with him.
Yes, Your Honor.
But Mr. Morton, he didn't have it. He was ready to fight this one to the bitter end. He swore up and down that the timeline didn't add up, and when those DNA results came back, he was certain the truth would clear his name.
And you say the timing of Miss Parker's pregnancy doesn't add up, and when today's DNA results come in, you will win the case.
But Ms. Parker wasn't backing down. It turns out that this wasn't just a case of a man stepping out on his girlfriend. Oh no, things were way messier than that. Ms. Parker wasn't just seeing Mr. Morton on the side, she was deeply entangled in a threesome with him and his girlfriend. That's right. At times, all three were involved. Other times, it was just her and Mr. Morton. And according to her, anytime she wanted to be with him, she was. Period. The audience gasped. Even Judge Lauren had to take a moment.
Sex with Mr. Morton if he has a girlfriend.
First of all, Your Honor, that's my baby father. Anytime I want to have sex with him, I'm going to have sex. You understand? Like, I was vulnerable. He called me. So, you know, we did what we did.
So, hold on.
However, if Ms. Parker thought this revelation would put her in the driver's seat, she was wrong. Because Mr. Morton's girlfriend, Ms. Lemon, had her own version of events. According to her, she had been the one who invited Ms. Parker into their bedroom in the first place. Out of pity, she claimed she let her man sleep with Ms. Parker because Ms. Parker was lonely and pregnant at the time.
Your Honor, the only reason why she was able to have sex with us is because I asked my boyfriend to have sex with her because she was lonely. My desires, me and my little freakiness, I said, my boyfriend, can you have sex with your pregnant baby mother because she's in need?
Pause, Your Honor.
How would she know if she's not there?
Your Honor, that is not true. Before I even left to go anywhere, before I was gone for a while, we was having sex before then.
The back and forth between the two women was electric, filled with side eyes, interruptions, and an almost laughable level of confidence. Mr. Morton rolled his eyes. He had done his own math, and in his mind, the numbers just weren't adding up. He and Ms. Parker had been intimate in early May. Yet the baby was born in December. 7 months? That didn't sit right with him at all.
There's a possibility that this could be your child?
It could not be my child because the timing is not right at all.
I'm not tripping off of that. I know that that's my son's father. I know. He looks exactly like my other son.
And so you're doubtful, Mr. Morton, because you say there's a timing issue.
Ms. Parker didn't budge. She knew the baby was Mr. Morton's. Why? Because according to her, he was the only one she had unprotected sex with. No doubts, no confusion, and no need for calculations. Then came another plot twist.
Parker, when was the last time you were intimate with someone else before that May 11th period when you were
The only
intimate with
person,
Mr.
Your Honor, I lie to you not. The only person that I have unprotected sex with was my baby father. Was Mr. Morton.
Your Honor, that's a lie.
Your Honor.
That's a lie.
She clocking
We down, yep, I'm clocking it.
You
just
can't
like you
clock
clock
it though,
mine. I
baby.
can.
You can't.
We
You
downtown.
can't.
Ms. Parker had been pregnant by another man before, but she had a miscarriage, and shortly after that, she got pregnant again. this time, she claimed, by Mr. Morton. The whole courtroom was spinning. Even Judge Lauren had to take a step back and lay it all out.
Your Honor, I do what I do. I love me. You understand me? I don't have unprotected sex with nobody but the ones that I trust. I trust this man. So yeah, every time I have sex.
But Mr. Morton's girlfriend, who is also Ms. Parker's girlfriend, wasn't convinced. According to Ms. Parker, a mistake in the due date initially led her to think that Mr. Morton couldn't be the father, but now that the mistake has been corrected, she is 100% convinced that Mr. Morton is the father. To back her case, she brought Mr. Morton's mother to support her testimony.
When she first had baby Aaron, she did not have anything because we were supposed to try to get together a baby shower. So she did have him early. So as far as support system, it was me and my daughter, which is Eric's sister, Mr. Morton's sister.
And her mother.
And excuse me, I'm talking.
It don't matter.
Judge Lauren had heard enough. The room was already boiling over with drama, with Ms. Parker and her girlfriend going at each other over their relationship. But there was only one thing that could settle this once and for all: the DNA results.
Mr. Morton, you are Aaron's father.
Thank you. I told you, like, I'm not no